This
Vista Economic
conference will
Development
now
Advisory.
be recorded.
Notice is hereby given that the Lago Vista Economic Development Advisory Committee will hold a regular meeting beginning at 4 p.m. via GoToMeeting as prescribed by VTCA Government Code Section 551.041 to consider the following agenda items. Items do not have to be taken in the same order as shown in the meeting notice. I'm going to say your name. If you just say present, I'll appreciate it. Don?
Present.
Brian?
Present.
Robin?
She's muted but present.
I see her.
I'm here.
Gage?
Present.
Norma? And Russ.
He's here.
Present.
Great. I want to open up the meeting to citizen comments for non-agenda items. If anybody has anything that they would like to speak to that is not on the agenda, now is your moment. I'm not seeing any hands go up. So before we move into business items, I'd like to welcome Mr. Don Jandro to our committee, back to our committee, shall I say. I know that many of you know Mr. Jandro and some of you may not. With that being said, Don, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and maybe telling us everyone a little bit about your involvement with the city, both in an official capacity and an unofficial capacity, that would be great.
Thank you. I've lived in Lago Vista now for going on 15 years. I have now returned to the Economic Development Advisory Committee. I'm a commissioner on the Planning and Zoning Commission. I'm on the Lago Fest Committee. I'm president of the Lions Club. I'm a realtor, and I teach Spanish conversation on Wednesdays. Is that enough?
I think that's great. Thank you, Don. Business items, number one, comments from our council liaison, Mr. Williams.
Welcome. I just wanted to say, I was on your workshop, but I was on the car phone, so driving to Houston, my mother had broke her hip, so I got most of the way through your workshop, and I really liked the 5 categories that you picked to focus your attention on. One suggestion I might have, though, is now that you have those categories, and I saw that you had some goals that you put under each one of those categories in the information that you provided for today. But one of the things that helped me through my career at Coca-Cola was them teaching me the SMART objective and actually breaking it down even further so that each member of the group will know how they can contribute to that specific objective that you're trying to achieve. And that was very helpful, making it specific, measurable, attainable, or achievable, reliant, and time-bound. So if you would take the example, a lot of you have focused on broadband in Lago Vista. So moving forward, I see you have that as an objective to continue. Who's going to attend the corporate meeting? Who's going to analyze information that's obtained from that? And then who's going to communicate with broadband companies? Those are all things that you could set up as objectives and assign it to specific people and work as a team to get all the necessary information and not make it burdensome on one person. So you might want to think about how you take those categories that you have and put specific actions against it to make it easier for you. But other than that, it was a great workshop that I just didn't catch the tail end because by the time I got to the hospital, that's when you were at that point. So kudos to everyone that put in that hard work to make your workshop effective. So that's all I have. Any questions from anyone in the group?
Mr. Williams, Councilman Williams, is there any When is the city going to be looking at its future land use map as part of a comprehensive plan review? Is there any talk about forming a subcommittee for that?
Not yet. What's going to happen, the subcommittee on the comprehensive plan has put the actions of what was accomplished in 2019, what was accomplished in 2020, and tried to figure out some actions for 2021. It will go in front of Planning and Zoning Commission, the first meeting in May, and then they'll establish what objectives and ordinances and focus they want to do, and then it comes to city council, and we'll look at it and figure out what focus city council wants it to be, and then we'll see how it all fits in. I'm hoping that someone in those two groups will focus on the future land use map, but I'm not trying to push that until I see how everyone pans out. So it's on the list of
Okay.
focus topics, but we just have to see how many of them they can accomplish and in which order they want to focus on those. Okay.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Williams? Nope.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Business item number 2, update from Retail Strategies. I believe that is Christopher.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
we can. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Eric, before I get started, do you have anything that you want to add or address? Okay, cool. Well, I'll keep this I'll keep this somewhat brief, but then kind of open for dialogue, so we have some questions. I'll start with, I'll give you guys a brief overview just as a refresher. And I'll start with saying back in February, we had a couple council members that wanted to just talk to us directly one-on-one. And so we had some conversations with some of the individual council members back in early February. And they basically, the extent of those conversations were a brief overview of everything up to this point and kind of, what we're looking at. So if you guys want to make me the presenter, I'll run through that real quickly, and then we can talk about kind of some of the current traction going on.
All right. Mr. Street, if you're available, can you do that for us? Stand by, Christopher. We need Mr. Street to do that. Oh, it looks like he's just done. You're now the presenter, sir.
All right, hold on a second. Let me pull this up. And like I said, this is a brief overview, mainly for anyone that hasn't seen this previously or needed a refresher. And so I'll go through this pretty quickly, so we have leave it open for questions and kind of talk about where we are up to this point. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, 1 second. Okay, real quick, and forgive me for anyone that has seen this already, then it may be somewhat redundant. I can't see anyone, so if you raise your hand, I won't be able to see you, but just holler at me if you have any questions, and I'll go ahead and stop. But just as a refresher, I'll just kind of talk about just kind of an outline of the process, and then where we are, and then where we are specifically in year 2. So if you guys, if anyone wasn't on the board at that time, and for anyone that was, just as a refresher, back in September of last year, due to COVID-19 concerns in the conference schedule being upset, we extended the year 1. We extended it by a couple of months, and then actually changed your effective anniversary date to mid-October. So due to that, we are roughly halfway through the second year of year two. But this is a brief overview of everything that was completed in year one. Much of year two follows the same outline, but instead of a lot of initially created data and a lot of created products, a lot of those products are updated in the year two. And then you also start to see a lot more traction from a lot of the that initial outreach that was completed during that first year. So as I mentioned, these are a couple, just an overview of that first year. We talked about a little bit about COVID-19, of course, how it had drastically affected the retail industry, and then specifically in y'all's case where we extended your first year was due to the in-person conferences being canceled. And I'll talk about the conferences more in depth here in a second, because we just recently got an announcement a couple weeks ago that the first in-person conference that we will will be able to attend, and one of the first ones that's coming back is scheduled for September, actually in your backyard of Austin. So the Austin Retail Live Conference is, as of right now, is planned to go back in person in early September. So of course that's exciting. It's exciting. It's a sign that things are starting to kind of return back to normal. So just a little bit more of that outline that I mentioned, and then of course the year two scope of services. As I mentioned previously, we're about 6 months into that year two. As of right now, we have in this year two since October, since that amended year, we've been in contact with a little over 40. We've had communications with a little over 40 retailers on your behalf. Some of these are continued, of course, from those continued conversations from year one, but so a lot of those are also new. And then as of right now, we're having continued conversations with about 20 off and on from interested parties, folks that are trying to get in the market. So that's remaining strong. And as far as kind of outreach efforts and everything tied to COVID-19, everything is really starting to kind of snowball. Everything's really picking up, and we're getting a lot of engagement from parties that are interested in entering the market. So as I mentioned, so about halfway through that year two, and at this point, all of the metrics of year two are tracking. The only two things I will point out are, of course, conference representation, which that'll start back in September. And then the other thing is the in-market visit. So we normally will visit the market at least once or twice a year, at the very least once a year. And of course, that's been delayed due to travel constraints. One of the things that we discussed with the city council or those city council members when we had those individual conversations with some of them was the idea of potentially coming into town and doing a kind of a virtual workshop, or if some people wanted to come in person, maybe do like a hybrid virtual in-person workshop. But due to the ice storm, and due to you guys had the ice storm, and then we had some inclement weather on our end as well, that it's kind of slowed those talks down, and we hadn't been able to continue those conversations of setting up a workshop. So that our in-market visit is still pending. So we need to make that happen. And then item 5, of course, conference representation. The Beyond Retail Live, the next conference will be the return of the ICSC conference in Las Vegas. And normally that is held in mid-May. And this year they have announced that the in-person version of that conference will be in mid-December now instead of mid-May. So after Retail Live, then the next show will be the big Las Vegas show in December. So a couple other things, just as a rehash of all the materials. This is of course your marketing guide for those that haven't seen it before. This is of course your primary piece of marketing for the community. This is kind of the primary tool that we use, and then you guys can use to go and to market the community. It really has all of the detailed initial data and demographics that the prospects could want to get an initial look at the community. And then it gives them that opportunity to come back and ask more questions. Elaine, an example of how this has worked even outside of our efforts is Elaine has gotten she's gotten requests, and then also she's been able to pass this on to some various housing developers that have been looking at the market this past year. And then she was able to connect those housing developers with us. And if they had any kind of questions on the data, or if they needed any kind of clarifications, we were able to do so. So just a little bit extra outside of our primary retail efforts. And with that being said, I don't know if I can't see if Elaine's still on here, but I don't know, do you have any comments on that, Elaine?
I don't believe she's
No
on.
comment. I'm just listening in, but I hand this report out whenever I can. So I hope those housing people got back to you. I have not heard from them since.
Okay. And with that being said, anytime there's any kind of, and Elaine has given us feedback on if there's like little changes or anything that needs to be made. Eric, of course, gives us changes and edits to it. And this piece is updated annually. That data set for the previous year has just now come out, and so we are in the process of updating this. So you'll actually get a new version of this here shortly. But it's updated in real time. If there's ever any changes or edits that need to be made, it is updated in real time. That's the front and back. And then the way that this works for anyone that hasn't seen it is it's a 4-page front and back folding flyer. And then when you open it up, it prints on big 11 by 17 a big wide brochure paper, and then when you fold it in the middle, it creates that front and back flyer. So when you open it up, it opens up as this aerial of the market. And what that shows, of course, to prospects or interested parties, it shows them the makeup of your retail footprint, and then it shows them.
I'm finally getting answers from him. Just got
it shows them that information that
you know how it's like
to enter the market.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I was getting some feedback. So this aerial shows you that your national retail footprint. So anytime a business comes into the market and opens up shop, then this will be updated. And then of course, if for some reason if a business closes, then this is updated in real time as well. So one of the things that we had talked about during the those conversations back in February was just some of the real estate that we're pushing out there and marketing. And of course, this is nothing new to you guys. You guys know your best real estate sites in town. But just to give you an example of some of the information that's being pushed out and the form that's being pushed out. So this is an actual marketing aerial that's being used for, of course, your primary shopping center there in town. We're communicating back and forth constantly with the shopping center owner, and as well as these other real estate owners that I'll talk about here in a second. But as I mentioned, this is an example of that. Another example, of course, is the corner just south of that shopping center, which This has been a big focus over the past few months since we were alerted that it was indeed listed. Eric gave us a heads up that it went on the market and it was being listed by Edge Realty. So we've been in constant contact with the listing broker. His name's Charlie Quisenberry, who actually has a listing on this property to, first of all, figure out exactly what the ownership wants to do with it, and then figure out if there, what the opportunity there is. And so as of right now, the ownership, they've gone back and forth about whether or not they wanted to sell it or if they wanted to potentially self-develop it into a little multi-use strip center. And so the latest that we've gotten from the property owners is that, or from Charlie, through the property owners via Charlie, is that they do want to self-develop it. And so Charlie is, through his efforts and then leaning on us, he's currently looking for potential tenants to fill the space. And with that being said, we've gotten quite a bit of interest on that corner. It's just, obviously it is it's kind of the creme de la creme of sites in the community, and everyone we've sent it to has given us initial interest on it. And so anytime that we do get interest from an outside party, then of course we're sending this to the listing broker for them to then go and attempt to make a transaction. So and all of this is reported through the updates. When Eric asks, if Eric requests an update, it's all put in the update, and then in the latest update, all the latest positive traction has been reported on that site. So if you guys have any questions on who it is that's currently looking, Eric has that report. So and then of course another site. It's not quite as prestigious as the corner site, but it is right up there with it, so to speak. And so we've put this one in front of quite a few folks, and I would lie with, if I didn't say that the corner kind of takes precedence over some of these others, but it is it's right up there. And then of course once that corner gets developed, then this is going to be this is really the next prime site. Some of the hotel groups that we've been working with in this past year, we've put this site in front of some of those hotel groups, and specifically the two hotel groups and not to be confused with the hotel group that Eric has worked with, and that Eric's group, the couple of hotel groups that we've worked with, we've shown them some of this site. Kind of the thought process with this one has been, maybe bring in a hotel that can take some of that property that's off the frontage, and then be able to develop the front, of course, the frontage for some of those retailers and some of those restaurants that require that. And so, and then restaurants and retailers, of course, that would complement a hotel. Some that like to, they like to be kind of in the shadow of it in order to take some of that business off of some of the folks that are staying there at the hotel itself. All right. So as far as slides are concerned, that is what I have as far as slides. But I say, as I mentioned earlier, as of right now, we are currently in conversations with, hold on one second. Okay. So as of right now, we're currently in conversations with roughly about 20 or so retailers that want to be in the market. Of course, some are more further along down the road than others. And we've got quite a few that have given us the green light. They want to be there in the market. Now it's up to in this case, Charlie and the ownership of that corner site to work a deal. So as of a few of those, they're out of our hands at this point. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and just turn it over to you guys for any kind of questions that you have.
Thank you, Christopher. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Committee members, Who has questions? Mr. Hunt?
Yeah, I was curious with respect to the corner property there at 1431 in Lomans. You had said that the owner wants to self-develop that. Any specifics on that and the way he wants to develop that property? Whether it's some type of strip center or he's looking for freestanding food service operations. Any information on that?
So the latest is actually a mixture of both. So what they've told us lately is having maybe a like a small strip center, and then having, but then with room for one freestanding business type. So one of the things that's it's in the update, and we had this conversation previously a while back with Eric, and then even back as far with Josh prior to Josh leaving, was maybe there was a couple C-stores, like nice C-stores, not your like run-of-the-mill gas stations, but some like nice high-end C-stores. We'd have some conversations about potentially one of those maybe being a good fit for, and kind of picture it as having the really nice C-store on the hard corner, and then the property that's off the or not the 5 acres that's off the corner, but the rest of that parcel, maybe building it out into a strip center. So we've had some interest. I just, without saying who it is, it would a very nice C-store that you guys would approve of has given us the thumbs up, and it's in the report that I sent to Eric that they would like to enter the market, and they're very interested in that site. So to answer your question, a little bit of mix of both.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else? Norma, we can't hear you.
I don't know my bandwidth. If I'm in and out, forgive me. Just tell me to say.
There's some
bandwidth
lag
is
on
bad.
your audio, but we are hearing you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Norma, your video has frozen. May I suggest turning your video off? That way.
Any trends that you're seeing in economic development that are maybe a little unusual or something that we?
I'm sorry, I heard, I picked up half of that. You said what economic development trends? Like, and just in general, or in, oh, you froze up again, I'm sorry. If you want to, you can try to, oh, I was saying you might try to use the chat box, but I think.
I'm hoping of attention to.
What's that now?
Hold on just a second, Christopher. Norma, try turning your video off. That way your bandwidth can carry the audio at the least.
Mike Sadel.
No.
Yeah, we're not getting you, Norma. I think what Norma was asking is what type of macroeconomic development trends are you seeing in communities of our size?
Okay. So just from a big picture, as far as trends, especially specifically with coronavirus and COVID-19, the biggest trends you're seeing right now is, first of all, you're seeing an uptick in interest, as I mentioned earlier, in from the retail standpoint. You're starting to see a lot of interest and a lot of folks that are willing to start finally investing their money. Of course, that was kind of slow early on, but now for the most part, everyone's getting pretty aggressive, wanting to go back and go ahead and invest. Outside of the retail realm, And the biggest thing that you're seeing right now is a big kick up in logistics. So I think logistics right now is probably the number one just general economic development trend right now, is that it's logistics facilities are kind of the hot and heavy kind of prospect right now. And there's a lot of firms out there looking for communities to plant those logistics facilities. Of course, tech facilities and tech company, small tech companies, especially like Austin has, is always pretty big. But then, of course, the other thing is you guys are fully aware of, and everyone in Travis County is fully aware of, is the work from home is not slowed down in some areas, especially heavily populated areas. So as far as a lot of those tech companies, they may be opening up shops here and there, but a lot of those folks are still working from home. So high level economic development, I think the biggest movement you see are in logistics facilities, and then of course, and then distribution tied to retail. A lot of just in time, even the retail companies putting up distribution and logistics facilities to get their goods out. But as far as retail is concerned, the trend is all positive. Everyone, it's all about the investment, and investment is very positive right now.
Thank you, Christopher. Does anybody want to ask any follow-up questions on that?
So Chris also will be representing us at retail. He's touched on Retail Live, but Retail Strategy, I'm signed up for that too, but also we have another arm with Retail Strategy. They will be representing Lago Vista at that show as well. Retail Strategies is scheduled to give an update to the City Council on May 6th, the first Thursday in May. And I would also ask Chris actually extended their outreach to ER places and urgent care that Councilmember Davallo Arch had asked for. So I'm not sure we got too much traction, but you guys might want to touch on that too, that you did extend it out to that, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good point, Eric. I had that on my list of things to talk about. Arch had asked us to pursue or potentially pursue some urgent care facilities, and the extent of what we did was we created a target list with Eric's help, and then Arch's help. We created a target list of basically urgent care and medical facilities that are either growing or have grown recently in Texas. And so unfortunately for us, we got a whole lot of rejections. A lot of folks telling us that they felt like Lago Vista is adequately covered by either their locations in Cedar Park or a lot of the bigger medical facilities, even closer to Austin proper. They just feel like a lot of them are covered the Lago Vista area.
I have a few questions for you, Christopher.
Okay.
The marketing guide, when do you expect to be updating that exactly?
So we are currently in the process of updating it right now.
Okay, so
the new data just came out a couple weeks ago, and so our marketing team is going through across the board updating all of the data on those flyers.
so is it a matter of days? Is it a matter of weeks? Is it next month?
It should be within the next couple weeks.
Okay. When you have that available, will you please send a copy to Eric and just to Eric and myself so I can distribute that to our committee members?
Yes, of course. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anytime there's new.
Also to the
Sorry, go ahead.
I just said, please include the Chamber of Commerce on the distribution list. Thank you.
Anytime that any of those new materials come out, Eric is the first person to get it. So we distribute everything to Eric, and then let Eric distribute it to his board or the council or whoever he deems appropriate. So of course, Eric will be the first one to receive all that.
That's fine. I'm sure Eric will forward it to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
That marketing flyers update on the website too immediately. Mary did update that once I get that marketing flyers, so it's up on the website as well.
Thank you. You mentioned that in one of your slides, you mentioned that you guys were targeting developers as well. Are you targeting anybody any developers who specialize in high tech? For example, I know that Samsung is currently buying up large tracts of land in East Austin right now. Are you aware of that?
So, and I'll be point blank with that. So we don't, anything outside of the retail sector. We'll come across, as I mentioned earlier, with those housing developers that Elaine sent on. Like, if we can support, we will, any way we can, but we don't target any commercial developers outside of traditional retail commercial developers. So anything like out in like traditional economic development, commercial developers, we don't target or identify any of those. But
did I understand you to say that you do target housing developers, or you do not?
So if we can, so we don't intentionally target, like we don't go out there and find new ones. But if they come to us, or if they come to you guys and you need some kind of data or need some kind of support to get them in, then we'll certainly assist in any way we can. But we don't intentionally go out and target any. No.
Have you engaged with any recently?
Yes. So I mentioned the one.
You alluded to the ones, but you didn't mention them by name.
Okay, so Elaine had sent one a while back ago, and then the most recent one that I had one actually come to me directly was Capstone Communities. If you guys are familiar with them, they are they're looking. It's a single family. It's a single family rental housing developer. They're actually based out of Birmingham, and that's how that's how they found us. They were looking to, and they may be closed on the property at this point, but they were looking at closing on a tract of land in Treviso, where they were I forget now at this point, but I think it's like 200 or 300 units, or 200 or 300 plots out in Treviso that they were looking to close on, and we had provided some data to those guys, and those guys came about by, as I mentioned, we're based out of Birmingham, and it's a development company out of Birmingham, and it was just a personal connection. Guy called me one day and said, "Hey, I didn't realize you were working in Lago Vista," and then requested some data. And I believe that Elaine had some conversations with those guys as well.
Right, I just want to clarify, it's not Treviso, it's Lakeside Tessera. So
Tessera, not Treviso.
Difference here for us.
Tessera,
yes, and they're different. They build a different product, which would be good for retirement people possibly. And they were talking about building at the front side of Lakeside Tessera as you first in. And I talked to the Tessera engineer that works in our building, and he confirmed they were close to closing or very deep into the negotiations.
Fantastic. And like you said, it's a different product, but it's still a very high quality product. It's still very high end. They're single family rentals, but you're talking about in the threes. They're like the total home value of these are still in the 300s, so they're not low value rentals.
So median home income price right now across the country is $358,000. Why do you perceive them as being high end?
So, well, as opposed to like traditional rental homes. So, as traditional like tract rentals or apartments compared to apartments, the average apartment average apartment unit isn't worth 300,000. That's what I mean, as opposed to traditional rentals.
So they're looking at trying to develop rentals, just single family residences, homes to rent out.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's as I meant as far as rentals are concerned, higher end rentals versus not necessarily apples to apples, but as far as rentals are concerned.
Okay. Samsung. Does anybody else have any questions for Gage?
Yeah, just one with respect to the data updates. I know that in the 2019 workshop, we talked about the fact that demographics based on just a straight geometric radius formula may not accurately reflect what we are because of the lake.
Right.
And we had talked about basing that data on drive times instead of on radius. Is that still the MO on this?
Yes, sir. Yes. Right after that meeting, we went back and adjusted the data to reflect those drive times because, like you said, the overall data pulled actually just south of the lake, and that was adjusted right after that meeting. Yes, sir.
The reason I ask is because the PowerPoint we were looking at referred to the 5 mile radius, and so that's why I asked if we were still sticking with that basis for them.
Okay. Yes, sir. And then that specific data pool was the was the overall big picture. So as far as when we're talking to retailers, we will use different ones. We'll talk that overall big pool, which stops at the water line, but then you'll still get those questions about the radius rings as well. So it's a combination of all that data.
Okay.
And your company's contract is set to expire with the city of Lago Vista in mid-October. Is that correct?
The end of year 2. So we have the way that it's set up is it's a 3-year engagement with, but every year on the anniversary date, there is an option to renew or opt out. And so the end of your second year is in October. Yes.
Year 2. Okay.
Yes.
One moment. Anybody else? Robin?
I was having a little bit of IT trouble, so I apologize. I might have missed a little bit what you were saying earlier about rentals in Tessera. So if I understand correctly, an outside developer is coming in and building some rental homes in the 300s, which, I mean, I guess his cost to build is almost irrelevant if he's just going to rent them. We need to more so know what rents are going to be. But why is that something new or attractive that we don't already have? And let our own developers that are here locally continue to develop out that. What are we gaining here, and what am I missing?
So and Elaine may know more about this at this point. I know she's working with a lot of these folks, but so the new hot trend right now amongst housing developers, you're seeing them across the country, are housing developers going in and building traditional homes and building those real nice footprints with traditional home values, but then they're maintaining the ownership. So they'll maintain the ownership. They'll maintain a lot of these groups will do master plan developments. They will maintain all the common areas, and then they'll rent at a high level to people that want to rent them, because right now, while there are a lot of the housing market's very hot for buyers and sellers, but then also a lot of folks right now are trending towards not wanting to buy, and they would like options. The overarching theme is they would like options to rent other than going to a multifamily apartment or going to a multifamily development. And so it's nationwide. It's a big trend right now for people to want to go in and rent traditional homes.
But what I'm seeing in that is the builders want that rental pool, typically because they're doing some kind of credit repair and trying to turn them into traditional home buyers. And so, you're just basically like a nesting ground for that to move into the other. That's the trend that I see, around the country. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's generally what I'm seeing. But I don't know. I don't know. I mean, are we that short on rentals here that we need, or want that? Or why don't they just, have our local builders build that for them, and they can buy up all the ones they want and turn them into rentals?
Can I talk a little? I would say looking up the Capstone properties, and I don't think that's their full real name. And they're developments that are real cute with sidewalks and all the houses face each other. They had started this kind of like in college towns, like kind of dorm little houses or whatever. So it's people who want to live by the lake, but then lock the door and go somewhere else to their other house in Tahoe or wherever people do. So it's a high-end retirement kind of rental place. And it's designed, behind the park where Nordstrom Rack and all that is, where those houses all face the street and they all have sidewalks and really nice yards. It's sort of like that concept at the front end. I don't think it's credit repair. That's not how they presented it. It's more for people who don't want to own. I also want to say, Waterloo could sell 15 homes to a bunch of renters too, and they don't do that. They insist it be to the actual owner of the house, and they want it to be single family homes, not to renters, to help us all be happy in Largo that we don't have a bunch of rental homes.
Okay, you say Waterford, the developer in Sarah, has a rental cap? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying look up Capstone properties to see their concept, but in Waterloo, Braun Homes, in classic Largo, they do not sell to groups of renters. They won't sell 10 houses to a guy who's going to make them all rental properties. Well, that's a company policy, or just a policy of what she told me. She said it'd be easy. We could deal with 3 people and sell all these houses, but we don't choose to do that because we want to make Largo happy. We want to be first-time home buyers that buy Waterloo properties. So in that way, it's a different concept that these are deliberately rental little houses in a community that all have neighbors, they all have pretty grass lots, and yet they can still lock and leave to go to Europe for a month or whatever.
All right, yeah, that makes sense. I guess at the heart of it all, I was hoping that we would have something come in for lower income housing. Like I said, if we got a hotel coming and luring in other businesses, we may not have all the demographics we need to
I agree. We need more apartments. But that's not what this calls about. But yeah, we definitely need more apartments.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Williams would like.
Can we get back to the retail strategies update? If you want to talk about that, we can. But we need to, Chris. We need an update.
Thank you, Mr. Zeno. I'll thank you, Mr. Zeno. Mr. Williams, you wanted to say something?
Just a quick thought. Retirement people are not looking to own a house. A lot of them are downsizing from their houses. The kids are gone. They don't want a water bill. They don't want a light bill. All they want is the phone, and they want to be able to spend 6 months here and go do 6 months somewhere else. So that's the type of home that I think these people are building in that community. I don't think you'll get low-end housing into Sarah, so that's not the area that low-rent housing would go in. So, but that's the type of community where, so I think they're going after the retirement community right there, basically.
So, there is a trend happening on a national basis where there are conglomerates, SPACs, and other hedge funds which specialize exclusively in buying residential properties for the purpose of renting them out. Ultimately, what can happen when you have large tracts like that purchased inside of these publicly traded stock portfolios, where you have a big block of housing, is you end up creating a monopoly on the rent in that area. That's one potential adverse impact to that. But while several of you were talking, I looked them up real quick, capstonecommunities.com, and seem to be well-funded. They know what they're doing. But that isn't necessarily the gist of this conversation. And that can be something we can talk about in a more appropriate forum, a more appropriate agenda item at another time. Staying with the agenda on update from retail strategies, does anybody have any other questions or concerns or anything else that they'd like to ask Christopher about? Okay. Well, Christopher, thank you very much for visiting with us today and giving us that update. And I think everybody on the committee is looking forward to receiving the updated marketing material from Eric when you make it available to him in the coming weeks.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me, and I'll have that to Eric as soon as it is once it's updated.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Business item number 3, discussion of EDAC vision and mission statements. Norma put a lot of effort into compiling this for us. And with that being the case, and I think it appropriate to perhaps hand this part of our discussion over to Norma, audio and video feed permitting.
Okay, so I chimed in as caller 1, I think it is, on my phone. Are you able to hear me this way?
Yes, perfectly clear too.
Okay, fantastic. So first off, I'm going to say this was simply a way to culminate our thoughts for discussion. This is just a draft document. I tried to make it look pretty. But as David spoke a little bit earlier, you know, it's something to get us started, and then something for us to craft to make our own in terms of where we want to go. Of course, the major thoughts that are in the document are from our work session. With that being said, I suggest that we go ahead and work through the order of this in order to have discussion and decide if there's any changes we want to make or additions or further discussion. So, Gage, would you be okay to go ahead and walk us through the vision and mission, and then we'll maybe go ahead and decide on if there's anything that, you know, we should change there, and then I'll go ahead and go into the categories if that's all right.
There we go. That sounds great. Thanks, Norma. What we're trying to accomplish with the vision and the mission statements are two very high level statements of where we want to go to and how we want to get there. So, you know, if for those of you that were at the workshop, you'll remember we talked about it in terms of a trip. The vision statement is defining where our destination is. What do we want our world to look like if we do our job properly? It does not get into the hows or wheres or anything else. It's specifically a single statement that defines our destination. The mission statement then, again, is a very high level statement that explains basically how we want to go about accomplishing that. So these are our two highest level directions. What do we want to accomplish and how do we want to get there? This is what we talked about. These two statements are what we talked about at the workshop. The language may not be exactly what we're looking for. That's what we want to kick around today and try and finalize that. So, you know, with that said, I think we just ought to open it up for discussion. Comments from everybody on the committee, especially David and Eric. How do you see these two directions as where we want to go? Comments, thoughts? you think we're on track or we're not?
Yes, I
How do
think-
we refine it?
I think you're on track. The document that you, Paul, and Norma worked on is a great document and great statements on there. We might want to tweak some things, but it's definitely well put together. So we definitely appreciate that. We're definitely on the right track.
Yeah, I agree.
I think we'd like to walk out of here putting a stamp on these two things. So any thoughts on how we might want to modify them to get them more in line with what we want to go about doing?
You know, Gage, thank you for working on this. The vision and mission statement, I think, are pretty simple, straightforward, solid. I think it's a good, you know, this is germane to this is for our work plan. I like it as proposed. Does anybody else would like to see anything different in the wording on either the vision or mission statement? All right.
Oh, I would agree with you, because we can always come back with objectives if you need to try to go to a specific objective. But I'm with you, Paul. They're pretty great, and as far as just a broad vision statement and mission statement that covers it. If we need to break it down by objective to something else different, we can always come and do that later.
Well, this will help us, Eric, set the general tone, and then, like you're suggesting, we can build our more detailed objectives as we work down the line.
You know, Gage, in our work session, I made several references to the Bernie, Texas, their work plan, and you know, this is well modeled. It seems consistent with what other cities are using. I think it looks professional. It looks good. I think we leave it as is.
I mean, if there are no other comments, I'd go ahead and make a motion that we approve the vision and mission statements as identified in Norma's document.
Just a procedural question. Excuse me for just a moment, Gage. Mr. Williams, if you would mind just kind of tutoring me a little bit here in my role. Under
Okay.
business items, do we need a formal vote to approve a business item? I mean, is this something that requires a vote, or?
I don't think you need a vote in order to approve what you're doing. If you
Okay.
feel more comfortable doing it that way, then you could do it that way. But Eric,
Okay.
I don't think they need a vote on their vision and mission. Do you? Mr.
Paul, I think they're also identified as action items further down in the agenda.
Agreed. I guess I was didn't know if we needed to wait until we close out the business items before getting to the action item. So if you please, let's come back to that. Let's address it once we close out the business items. So
Yeah, I think you could do it all at once. You could do the vision, the mission, the action items all at the same time and make it one.
okay. All right then. So if there's no more discussion on item number 3, business item, discussion of EDAC vision and mission statements, we'll move on to number 4. Is there any other discussion?
I think Robin had something to say.
Yes, please.
That when that goes into the minutes, those 2 statements should be in there. So what you're saying should be where it's easy for someone to find that if it's in there. That's what I'm saying. It's just, you know, we're saying, yes, it's good. So in the minutes, these things should be recorded, even though we've said them before. It should be there since it's something. That's all.
So for the purpose of the minutes, then I will ask the committee: is there anybody in disagreement with the proposed language?
No.
Or perhaps put a more appropriate way for minutes. Does everybody agree with the language as is? Yes. Okay, great. Number 4, discussion of annual work plan strategies and objectives. I will again turn this over to Norma.
So, thank you, everyone. We're kind of trying to find our way here. And again, you know, I'm saying this is a draft just because sometimes it's easier to begin with opening thoughts. You know, we can change this and just make it a living, breathing kind of document. I just find I need I call this a North Star, you know, how to, that I can come back to and revisit. That being said, we use the 5 categories that Gage had presented. So our efforts and our focus would like to be around supporting existing businesses, recruiting new businesses, developing local infrastructure, you know, helping to recommend government policies and programs, and maybe some efforts around promoting or advocating Lago Vista. And again, all of this in terms of advisory to the council on where economic development, you know, can be enhanced. What within those groups, I think, especially like in infrastructure, they're so important. We've already started looking at the proposal of subcommittees to actually explore, research, act. And so I would almost propose in terms of these to really see, one, you know, how do people, you know, think about it in terms of the supporting existing business? Do we have someone that would champion that particular section? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections. Maybe we can, one of us take each of those sections to keep a focal point and a reporting and keep actions going, and to help extend out and clarify or create the action items in each. I don't know. I'm opening this part up for discussion in regard to those particular categories. I think we'll do that. We got to perfection, guys. Are you? So, well, in terms of supporting existing businesses, you know, Robin, you know, some of this really came up out of your passion in terms of, you know, assisting grants and research. Can I ask, what do you think are the items that we got listed here? Do you think, is that appropriate within this? Is there any feedback on that?
Yes, and I think there are a lot of things that we could discover that might be helpful. You know, there are opportunities that you have to kind of look for them. You know, they're not going to come knocking at your door. But yeah, I thought that was a very important place for us to go.
You know, on supporting existing businesses, you know, we also talked about incubator hubs and things like that. Something to consider is this new Lago Vista might be getting as much as $1.9 million coming into the city from the recent COVID legislation. I don't know if y'all heard about that yet. Mr. Williams, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, sir.
You know, something we might, you know, a portion of that, something for us to think about, I think, is perhaps making recommendations to council on how to spend a portion of that on supporting local businesses. You know, we had Lago Bucks recently. I think what we might consider is ferreting out what were the, you know, there's always room for improvement, no matter what it is. There's always room for improvement. Is another program like that for a percentage of the 1.9 million ideal? Is how could we do it? So that could be something that, you know, Norma, you suggested maybe 5 people from our committee taking on each of these 5. that some ideas from somebody who takes on supporting existing businesses, some ideas with regard to how our committee could recommend spending a portion of that money. And I think what that should entail is how much money, what can we expect from that? What is the economic impact, et cetera. Any thoughts on that? Yes, Mr. Williams.
You know, if you were looking at just, let's just say, supporting existing businesses, it may be that you need to go out and meet with some of the existing businesses and determine what needs are out there, and then try to formulate your ideas on how you would utilize some of that money when it comes in, and you know, so I don't know if you were talking about putting just one person in charge of that, or whether you thought that one person was doing all of that. You know, I think if you decide to put one person in charge of something, and then she depends on the rest of you to help with different parts of going out and meeting with different companies that are in our different existing businesses that are in our marketplace right now, that would be helpful. So you know, you just have to define how you want to go about getting the necessary information that you need to come up with the decisions that you need to come up with.
Agreed. Let me see something.
Yeah, if I could add too, it's going to be real easy to slide from more general strategies into specific objectives. And so, you know, what I'm hearing from Norma is that the categories that are listed here are basically strategic directions that we want to work on. And underneath those, one of them might be, to Paul's point, how we use the money in this specific COVID relief package. Maybe I'm being too linear here. I've been accused of that before, but I think it would help if we could come to agreement on what our primary strategies are, which we've defined as these 5 items. And then we can decide how we want to approach it, one person spearheading each of those or not, and then move into specific objectives under each one of those.
I agree.
It seems to me too that that amount of money is not going to go to one of those 5 things. There's probably a place in each one of those 5 that funds would be helpful to make something come to life. You know, my husband and I were talking about the things in Lago Vista that we look at and wonder, could they grow, could they bigger, could they be more interested? If you take Brock's, for instance, like Elaine has talked about Brock's. Brock's is a really fine little restaurant. If they had bigger space, you know, is there a possibility that if there's if there were more really good restaurants in Lago Vista, that would be a real accomplishment. I think and so it's one of the things that could be done. It's not, I'm not saying it's the only thing, but it is definitely something that could make a difference in those businesses having more people coming to them, especially once we can all go back to wherever we're going to go. It's not because the COVID's been an issue, but
over the last few weeks, I've seen in my charts that I've shared with some of you, or I think all of you have shared charts where you can see those graphs and you just see the retail spending going up, you know, as our marketplace opens back up to retail. And that's good, but I have to say personally, I have reservations about propping up what some businesses that might not be run well or not sustainable. No one business comes to mind when I say that, but excuse me, I sent a chart to everyone a couple days ago, and it showed where is the future job growth, most likely to be, and where is it least likely to be? And where it's least likely to be is in your leisure and hospitality, a lot of your retail spending. And I think one thing we've seen is that it's important to bring in, what kind of businesses can we help that will bring in outside dollars instead of just recirculating local dollars at the local restaurant or food trailer, et cetera. So something underneath supporting, that's a topic of conversation, an area to look into under supporting existing businesses. But right now, I mean, are these 5 topics, is this, do we want to change this?
That's really where I was going, Paul, and David, to your point. I actually was thinking more of each, kind of like you're our liaison, David, that each of the, maybe one EDAC member champion or be the liaison, or what, basically the person to keep a focal point on that particular area. Should we all decide that these are the strategies? So that's the first point, is are these categories and strategies okay? Is there something that we need to add? Is there something, we're missing? So I think at this point, if we could just kind of, guys, is as we formulated it here, are y'all good with this, or do we need to add something else? David?
Paul,
yes, David.
What you just mentioned would fit under recruiting new businesses, okay, which is one of the categories that you have. But you also have to take care of existing businesses and try to see if you could add to the existing businesses. So I think you have the various categories that you can put whatever you wanted to do. If you were looking at bringing in new dollars into the community, that would fall under recruiting new businesses. If you're looking at how to help existing businesses, and you brought up Brock's. Well, one of the problems with Brock's is they can't get the necessary help to take care of the business that they have, and that's a problem. And also, I mean, Domino's has the same problem. I'm sure Castle Mexico, when they open up their doors, they're gonna have the same problem. So it may be for existing businesses, there's some sort of program where train people. There's some sort of training program for employees on a lesser level, but on a recruit new businesses, it may be that you focus on a particular company that you think would be great to come into Lago Vista. So
all great points. I would like to expound upon one of those points you just made, and it's about the available workforce at the lower income scale to support the local businesses. And what comes to mind is our quality of life indicators that we have here in Lago Vista. How can we make our community more attractive to talent that first seeks to live here as well as work here?
Right.
But isn't one of the issues that it's very difficult for a person who wants to come, generally it's relative young people. So there are not a lot of places to work, to live. That was when Starbucks came, that was one of the things, was an issue. The people were having to come, I think they still do, from Cedar Park to work. So it seems to be that it's like everything is nothing is separate without an impact on something else. But perhaps the idea of reasonable housing so that people can come and work in Lago Vista and not have to drive back and forth anywhere.
I think those are some valid points. I think also too that I think if somebody wants to live somewhere, they can often, they'll want to be there. Do these people want to live in these younger people want to live in Lago Vista, where there's not a lot of amenities, where there's not a pub? where there's not a movie theater, where they don't have all the retail stuff like you do around Town Center in Cedar Park or Round Rock or other communities. And I think, Sunset Park and other parks, really building up the things in Lago Vista that'll make people want to stay here in the long term is part of that economic development, which is pursuant to keeping people here and making them want to live here. How do you, that's just such a broad thing to try to tackle. And as you pointed out, Robin, it's definitely all interwoven. There's this need here, but then there's this problem here. How do you tackle that one? Kind of a whack-a-mole kind of situation. But these 5 things, does anybody want to change, add, amend these 5 things? If not, we can move on to the next item and talk about subcommittees and maybe getting some people on point, like David was suggesting and Norma, and work on this. So with that being said, I guess I'll ask, is everybody in agreement that these are our 5 items, our 5 categories that we're going to focus on? Raise your hand if yes.
Yes. That was Brian.
Don?
I can't come up with the packet, I'm sorry.
I understand. Would you like me to email it to you real quick?
I would appreciate it.
Don, did you get the email I sent?
Yeah, I did, but I can't, was it an email or a text?
An email.
Okay, I just got Paul's thing, probably the same document. Okay, thank you.
Okay. This business item number 5, discussion regarding the formation of various subcommittees for the purpose of facilitating the achievement of EDAC strategies and objectives, including an infrastructure committee focused on broadband internet service, mobility, transportation, public utilities, and facilities within the city of Lago Vista.
Paul, if I could suggest, I would think that we just ought to fold that into our discussion of how we organize all of our strategies. I mean, organize around all of our strategies.
I concur. Okay, so let's talk then about subcommittees. Who would like to help? Who would like to, how do I word this? In terms of forming a subcommittee for the infrastructure and everything else that we're talking about, does anybody have any ideas on how best to form the subcommittees for these purposes, as stated in our agenda?
Just a thought in line with what Norma was suggesting a minute ago. With only, what are there, 6 of us on the committee?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be difficult to build a lot of subcommittees.
Right.
Around 5 strategies. Maybe the best idea is for each of us to take one of the strategy topics, as Norma was saying. I'm not sure what the right title is, liaison or whatever. I'm not sure what we call it.
So is there one, Gage, that jumps out at you that you would like to wrap your arms around?
Well, I've always kind of been interested in the infrastructure piece, but I'm certainly willing to work on whatever the committee would like me to.
And I was going to say, the supporting existing businesses, mainly because of the workforce pipeline issues, something that's passionate near and dear to my heart. unless somebody else would like to run on that first.
I didn't hear everything you said. Norma, did you say existing businesses or recruit new businesses? The first?
Existing businesses.
Okay. So what I'm doing is I'm writing down everyone's name next to something. And if you don't volunteer, I'm going to pick one for you. Don.
I'm with Gage on infrastructure.
So identify five in a quick row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What are they? Because you said you didn't have it, Don.
So support existing businesses. This is on page 3 of our draft work plan.
Right.
Support existing businesses, recruit new businesses, develop local infrastructure, recommend government policies and programs, and promote, advocate Lago Vista. So I've got Norma down for supporting existing businesses. I've got Gage and Dawn down for develop local infrastructure. Recruit new businesses.
Isn't that the role of the gentleman that just got through talking?
His focus is primarily retail. It's retail businesses only, and we need to look beyond that at trying to get tech in our backyard, for example, out here.
And this really needs to be a committee member, I would think, serving as that role.
I am so tight on time.
Right. So
this is Brian. I'm happy to do the third one, recommend government policies, programs on creating an economic development corporation.
That is something, by the way, Brian, as you contemplate that, consider that funding we have coming in to the city. Perhaps, how much, one of the things you might want to look into is what kind of seed money does a development corporation need for new cities? For a city our size, how much seed money do they usually put into them? How many are, how many staff it, et cetera? I suspect council wouldn't mind hearing on that to some degree. Would you agree with that assumption, David, or would you prefer to refine that or just nix it all together?
No, I mean, we're open to hear anything that comes about. It's just gathering the necessary information that you feel comfortable with, and making sure, that's not a problem.
I mean, that's just my input, Brian. You can drive that as you see fit. I just wanted to throw that out there for you. Promote and advocate Lago Vista.
I'd be interested in doing that.
Okay.
There's a specific definition now. I should know, but.
Who would, promoting and advocating Lago Vista, I'm sure I should think that, as you start that effort, Robin, maybe some startup conversations with Elaine at the chamber and her replacement would be.
I've talked to them several times. Sure, be glad to.
And maybe our city manager and mayor, just getting thoughts from them.
Sure.
And that Jennifer Sandoval, she is very knowledgeable on what's going on in the community. She also did live living information, so she knows a lot about the community. So it would be helpful that, and she's the new chamber director.
And isn't the goal to have people wanting to move here and and understanding what a lovely place it is and why. You know, it's not, to me, you know,
Yeah.
when we moved here, my husband grew up in Austin, and he had never been to Lago Vista, ever. And one day we decided we needed to buy a house, so we went to look for one, and we ended up out here. And I think a lot of people come for that. But when I think about the, well, we can think about that later. Never mind.
I think it's something that you can create and bring back to the group, and then let them help you formulate and take it to whatever level you want to take it to. But you know, I think one of the reasons for putting a person in charge of each one of these is for you all to bring ideas back to the group and let the group help you formulate what your ideas are and go from there.
So with 1 second, Don, with that, on that, following on what David said, you know, I think, and this is a question for everyone, perhaps what we should do, each of us respectively, is, okay, figure out what it is, what are your ideas for how supporting existing businesses, promoting, advocating along this, you know, come up with like your ideas for how to execute this and bring those ideas back to discuss amongst ourselves at the next meeting, and then we can action it from there. What do y'all think about that?
Okay, but you as the chairman probably have to have a voice, or at least a larger understanding of what each person's doing. You said you were really busy. Maybe you're getting busier.
It's the chip shortages right now. You may have heard about the news. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I think that's a great direction, Paul. We've really accomplished a lot when you think about what we've done so far today in terms of, you know, identifying the high level stuff, our basic strategies, how we're going to organize around attacking each one of those. The next step, like you're suggesting, the right next step, and Dave did, which is each of the subject leads, each of the strategy leads goes back now and starts to develop some recommendations on more detailed objectives they can go after in their respective areas.
I like that term, strategy leads. Let's run with that. Strategy leads. Recruit new businesses. I would love to help someone, but I can't take this on alone. I'm just lacking time right now. What do you guys as a committee, what do you envision recruiting new businesses entails? I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me is simply cold calling. You know, retail strategies, that's what they do. They either take orders, you know, you're either an order maker, or you go out there and you create business and you're a closer. So
I think also there are needs of various kinds of businesses in Lago Vista. They're not here. So, you know, it's taking a look at what are the things, why would people move here if there are X number, whatever those things are. There are various things, and it's not, your point of it's not only retail. I think that's really critical. So it seems to me that's a really important thing, is why would people want to come here, and what kind of businesses, both businesses who come here, and what kind of businesses would people use when they were here?
Yeah, along those lines, I think if y'all remember from the workshop, if you look at our old documents that we were working on, our old objective documents, there's something like 15 different types of businesses that are identified in there in one way or the other that we should be trying to get to come to Lago, but there's no priority, there's no focus. And so maybe part of it is saying, you know, in terms of diversifying our economy, right, and so on, this is where we really need to target our efforts.
So the thing that's really clear is each thing is integrated with the other. There's nothing that's not involved for it's going to work. All of those things have to be done. Everybody has their job, but it's going to be integrated easily. If it works, it's going to be that integration would be there.
Right. And there's, you've got some overlapping. I mean, even under Recruit New Business, part of it is aiding, what does Eric need, at this point in time? Is there research that we can go find a grant for? Discussing possibilities and ideas. One thing maybe envisioning, okay, what would we like Dawn Drive to envision to be, but again, or even just the targeting. So whoever is the strategy lead, love that, for that particular section, then, creates the priorities and just is the cheerleader, for those efforts and these tactics and strategies to get underway.
I think you mentioned overlap, Norma. Something that comes to my mind between supporting existing businesses and recruiting new businesses is identifying businesses local here in Lago Vista, which are on the precipice of breaking out and growing. They're right there. And they just maybe they need mentoring, maybe they need help identifying where they can office or find some additional warehouse space. And this is actually, Mr. Williams, kind of what was in the back of my mind when I asked you if there was any intentions to look at the future land use map. And it's because I feel like we do need to identify some areas in Lago Vista where we can bring in these tech companies. Where can we get some heavy industrial zoning, for example?
Right.
Where are those areas? I don't know off the top of my head, but I know they don't want to build on the side of the hill if they don't have to, just because of the engineering costs. And
Correct.
I think, there needs to be a reality check. Are we spinning our wheels thinking that we're going to bring in and turn this into, Austin is called the proverbial Silicon Hills, but it's really flat. And, what are our chances of trying to recruit some of those tech companies? And where could they go? And if that's not realistic, where then should the focus be in growing our local economy?
There, an issue that I've heard people talk about is the fact that there is this beautiful place, but there is no real access to the lake unless you buy into the POA. And so
that is, Robin, I've watched many meetings on this at council and had conversations with people, and I just don't think that the city is going to be able to get us any access to the POA anytime soon.
Correct.
I do understand that. So that's a workaround that you absolutely have to take into mind.
What's the name of the recently refurbished or remodeled park?
Arkansas
Thank
Bend.
you.
Yeah.
Has anybody, raise your hand if you have not been there.
What was the name?
Arkansas Bend.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
The Travis County Park. It's a beautiful park.
Oh, it is.
I mean, that should be part of I think any marketing that Lago Vista does. I mean, I think that could be potentially a great anchor for us out here. What are those anchor things? If I was on the Parks and Rec meeting yesterday, listening quietly, biting my lip, and they've got a lot of ideas, and I think that one of the things Austin has is a lot of outdoor stuff. I mean, you've got Bull Creek down off 360. If you want to go hiking or biking, it's really just 10 minutes in any direction or 5 minutes in any direction. And trying to capitalize on those things that we have here in Lago Vista that are easy like that, the outside resources, is a big plus for us. Even if it's just making it available a large space for people to shoot model rockets or just whatever, a venue where you could have a concert, a Lago Fest in Lago Vista instead of Jonestown. Just my broad thoughts on that. you know, you mentioned access, Robin. Something that comes to my mind that I would encourage council and planning and zoning to consider is, you know, maybe we need to find out how many people can we pack in to Lago Vista until we have a veritable parking lot on Loman's Ford and 1431. How many fold, you know, can Lago Vista grow 2 times its current population, 3 times? At what point is there just not enough room to build new schools, or the water system can't handle it or keep up with the growth, or the roads, et cetera? You know, how dense can we get between here and, you know, before 1431 is just impassable? Do we know that, Mr. Williams? Do we know, like, any projections on that?
There are all kinds of projections on that. Okay, and you know, it's not something that you're going to cut off anytime soon. It's, you know, there's places for new water tanks and water storage and everything else that would be down the line, and I'm sure TxDOT is looking at 1431 as carefully as possible, and as people continue to move out this way, they'll widen the road at that time. They'll know exactly when. There's also in their plans to widen Loman Ford, but it has to hit a certain population group before they'll act on that. So, I mean, there's all kinds of projections to that effect.
And this year, also,
I want you to understand one thing. Lago Vista is not in a problem area on people wanting to live out here. Okay, you know, people are coming. You know, and so we're not having a problem bringing people out here. they're coming automatically. What we have to figure out is how do we support with amenities and stuff like that all these people that are coming out here. Okay. And Paul, in regards to tech companies, we might not be able to bring a tech company to Lago, but we may be able to meet with a tech company that has moved to the north side of town and get more of their employees to live out here. Because young employees that are working for tech companies, they're young, they like the lake, they like to be close to this. And if I was working in Cedar Park for Dell or something like that, this would be a perfect place to live and work. And a lot of the tech companies are sending their employees home to work. So, you know, that's where broadband comes in and everything else. So there's a lot of opportunities that we have that you all can focus your attention on. Just because you lead something, Paul, doesn't mean that you have to do the work. I mean, if you let the existing business, it may be just one business that you want to focus in on. And if something else came along, you would send it to one of the other people to say, hey, Don, I need you to focus on this business and see if what we can do with this, or engage this. You know, so don't think leading something means that you have to do all the work.
All right. We were speaking. What is the local? What's the term, everybody? What's the white building on Dawn and Loman's Ford that's
The
vacant?
Fort.
It's referred to as the Fort. Okay, the Fort. 2 meetings ago, I said that I knew the owner and I would reach out to him and see if it was available. My friend who owned it actually sold it, and it is a couple that own it, and he sold it to them. And David, for your reference, Axel Sigmar is the one who used to own that, and he sold it. But sorry,
do you know who owns it now?
I don't know their names, but I don't know. I might buy the building, quite frankly. But you know, Axel's happy to facilitate that. But my only concern is it's going to need all new windows. there's $100 grand, and it's going to need commercial not elevator, excuse me, all new AC systems. He said it needs new ACs, it needs new windows. But, you know, I think a building like that, you know, like we've all seen the old North Shore Homes building in Jonestown, which was purchased by a guy in his late 20s or early 30s actually, and he now rents that out, and you have like 6 or 7 businesses officing out of it, and that's what I kind of personally envision for the fort. I think that could house a lot of businesses. I have the other building on other side of the street, on that same side of the street on Lomans. A good friend of mine, one of my vendors, he's the other tech guy in town, by the way. He owns that building where the academy is, and you know, he rents it out to some people who have a Spanish-speaking church inside there. He's got a chiropractor in there, and of course, he's got the daycare in there. There is demand for office space and for young business, for small businesses at Lago Vista. They need office space. So, all right, I'll take on recruit new businesses. And then between now and our next meeting, I think we all need to focus on what we're going to be bringing back to each other for further discussion. All right. Let's move on to number 6, business items. Is there any more discussion on number 5? No? Okay. So number 6, Eric, business, anything for us?
Yes, we don't have that much update from our meeting from 2 weeks ago in the workshop, but the brewery company finalizing their site plan, is coming back now looking at possible incentives. The hotel, we just had a site plan meeting with the hotel group this past week. And so they're finalizing their site plan, and they have a couple of ESD items that they have to address as well on that before they move forward. As you know, we extended the 380 agreement with the village for 3 months, so they have their 4th tenant pretty much. I don't know if the sign, but he has the 4th tenant, which is going to be the Suzanne's husband, the Wild Navy, the candy store. So it's going to be the candy store that's going to be going adjacent next door to that. And also, myself, Norma, and Meredith was on a call this morning on a Zoom with the National Sign Plazas. We were talking about Wayfinder signs, and they actually do home builder program signs. So I would let Norma take my time on that, because Norma was very fluent on that, and go ahead and talk about that for a minute, Norma.
So I really enjoyed the meeting today, and especially in terms of supporting existing businesses, and I'll get to have maybe in the future make light we use this. But I was intrigued with the way for signs, beginning with the builder program, because with the builder program they begin with really nice signs in order to have people find, the builders. And if we're talking about recruiting all those wonderful techie people from other places to come here, I think that would be really nice. But the added advantage of this particular program is that at least what National Signs does is they have the builders basically pay. So it doesn't cost.
Can everybody mute? Can you mute if you're not talking? I got some background. I'm some background noise going.
Yeah, you're kind of breaking up there. Would you mind backing up to what you said to the builders? They work with the builders and they help to pay for work.
Right. The builders pay for these particular signs. Now it has the added benefit. So development services, is having to use code enforcement to ensure that the signs don't get out of control in Lago. But what this can do is to help that side of the city as well. So I think that underneath, I think I had in here under awareness and support, basically for areas for the city, and even for other initiatives, is to look at this Wayfarer signage. Now, Elaine has done a lot of work in the past on this, and so would love to basically pick her brain, etc. But I'm really encouraged about this kind of a program. It could get us started with the Wayfarer signage, and then potentially we could expand it, like Leander and Cedar Park. And Eric had extensive knowledge and background in regard to how Leander was able to use this kind of maybe a program to jumpstart and get into the Wayfarer signage. So anyway, it was really enlightening to me about how sophisticated I think this kind of program is for putting up signs within the community, but that it had the added benefit of maybe reducing costs in regard to code enforcement and spiffing up and prettying our city. So anyway, I think it was wonderful, and I would like to continue to kind of maybe champion this particular thing and how it can expand. And then I may be jumping on and pulling on other people's strings, like Dawn and Meredith, anyway, other people, just to say, hey, what do you think about this? Eric, was there anything else that I missed on that, just in terms of reporting out? I was excited about it.
I think you touched on it, Norma. And of course, the home builders program is no cost to the city. When you get into Wayfarer, that's when the price comes in. So they will be sending out some type of presentation, a quote, and I will distribute that to the group once I get that together from them.
Just a quick question. So Firefly Cove is not in Lago Vista?
It's in Lago Vista.
Is it?
Yeah, it is. Because they were subject to our zoning ordinances, and we as a city gave them a PDD, and actually approved a zoning application from them, an amendment to the PDD, if I'm not mistaken, where we gave them the approval. It was a variance to the setbacks and the minimum square footage, if I'm not mistaken. They're going to have houses in there as small as 1,200 square feet.
Right, I saw that.
But they are not in the POA.
Correct.
No. That's right. They're not in the POA.
They're in the city, but not in the POA.
Yeah. Well, they're not too far from Arkansas Bend.
Okay. Well, thank you, Eric and Norma, for participating in that meeting. And did you say, Meredith, you were in that as well? Awesome. Meredith, I'd like to ask you, before we go on to action items, is there any feedback, any thoughts, anything that we should know? Anything
generally in the city, in the community?
Anything that you think we would be helpful to our committee in knowing?
To our committee. I've reached out to Cat Metro per our discussion last month and have started receiving some numbers. And we will be looking at those and seeing if we can put together some information for you to look at. I think the biggest kind of exciting thing is that we have the new chamber president, which of course, or director that Elaine told us about. I've been working with her through the city for the past year and a half or so when we came upon her website, Lago Livin', and we pushed out information to her about our community events and that sort of thing. And the website has been a really great resource for people. So I think she's going to be really great with the chamber, and I'm really looking forward to working with her. Citywide, I just want to throw this out to you all since we're here. We do have the third leg of our storm recovery debris removal. It's going to be next Tuesday through Thursday and Saturday from 7:30 till 4:30 p.m. It'll be at Municipal Way, which is right behind the police department. And it will be all storm debris, residential storm debris. So not just brush or trees or branches, but it'll be any kinds of recyclable materials or demolition items. You know, if your pipe burst and you have that kind of metal stuff like that. So we're just finishing up the details with Public Works before we send out a release, but please be looking for that online.
And what are the dates?
Right now, Public Works is looking at, let me just double check the next Tuesday through Thursday. So that would be Tuesday, the 20th through the 22nd. And then they are saying that Saturday, if I'm not mistaken, which is the 24th. And that is 7:30 till 4:30. And again, it's right behind PD, which is just down the parking lot from City Hall. They will be requiring some things, and much like the brush drop off from last couple times regarding a waiver and a form and ID, it's for Lago Vista citizens, residential debris, and we'll be putting that out on the website soon, as soon as I've got clarification and sign off on all the details. So that's about it.
Thank you, Meredith. Moving on to action items. Kind of consideration and possible approval of recommended EDAC vision and mission statements and work plan strategies and objectives. Anybody like to make a motion to approve the mission and vision statement we discussed early on under business items? I'll make a motion to approve as written.
I second that.
Thank you. We have a second from Norma. All those in favor, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Motion approved. And number 8, I'm going to change the word on this slightly. Consideration and possible approval of the formation of strategy leads for the purpose of facilitating public outreach and research in the effort to achieve EDAC strategies and objectives. And just to recap on who is doing what, we've got support existing businesses. Norma will be that strategy lead or subcommittee. Recruit new businesses, that will be Paul, myself. Develop local infrastructure, Gage and Dawn. Recommend government policies, programs, Brian. And promote, advocate Lago Vista will be Robin.
Paul, only thought I might throw out, not to jump on anybody that's not in the meeting anymore, but Russ can probably help us on one of those.
I'll reach out to Russ offline. I noticed that he dropped off as well. Just make a note to myself. Okay, we need a motion to approve these 5 subcommittees strategy leads.
I'll move that we approve the 5 strategy leads as you just identified.
Second.
Who was the second on that?
Yeah, Jandro.
Okay, Don. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? If no further discussion, then all those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Okay, motion is approved unanimously. And we'll move on to the consent agenda. All matters listed in item 9, consent agenda, are to be considered routine by the committee and will be enacted by one motion without discussion. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. Item number 9 under the consent agenda is consider approval of the following minutes: March 29, 2021 work session. Has anyone not read the minutes? With everyone having read through the minutes, then I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the minutes.
Move to approve.
And I see a second from Robin.
Yeah, that's fine.
Any discussion? No discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 The minutes are approved with unanimous consent. Future meetings. Consider items for future committee meetings. I have a couple that I'd like to put out there and see what you guys think. Brian, can you hear me at this moment?
I can.
Great. Brian, I am just pulling up. Brian mentioned something to me via email that I'd like to ask Brian to speak to. And Brian, would you still like to see that item on the future agenda? And if so, would you please speak to it for the committee?
Yes, I think it's something that, we need to talk through. There is a proposed bill working its way through the House Ways and Means Committee right now that would move sales tax collections from origin-based for Texas sales to destination-based. So from a business standpoint, that's going to make it much more difficult for our small businesses within the community, as they will need to collect sales tax based on the destination to where they ship goods to. And also from an economic development standpoint, it may limit the impact of any economic development agreements that we enter into in the future with potential businesses, as they would be collecting tax outside of the city.
So thank you, Brian. So with that, what I envision is putting this on the future agenda for us to discuss, and basically we could potentially make a recommendation to council to either endorse the House bill or oppose the House bill, and then they could pass a resolution to that effect and forward that to our state senator or state representative. The House bill that Brian is referring to is House Bill 4072, destination-based sales tax sourcing. I'll repeat that for Norma. House Bill 4072.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then another item that I'd like to see on the future agenda is a resolution, whether or not to, basically discussion and a possible resolution to make a recommendation to council on whether or not to renew the contract for retail strategies. Does anybody else have any other future agenda items they'd like to see?
I like you want to put that one on.
You'd like to see that one on?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have anything that they'd like to discuss on the next agenda? Okay, so right now I've got House Bill 4072, retail strategies contract renewal, which is coming up in mid-October for year 2. There's the option to get out of it. Should we make a recommendation to council to stay in it or to exit? And then I need to come up with the wording, but I think it'll be to regroup on our 5 respective impact strategies, the strategy leads, and have us come back with ideas on how to pursue those 5 items further.
Paul, and I want to add in there the builder program potentially on a future agenda. You know, should we be able to make some progress on that? Want to make sure that that stays in the mix of our future agenda items.
Or at least keep it on the agenda without any action. Okay.
Right. Right.
Discussion. Okay. Well, guys, we had a long one, and you know, I think everybody deserves credit for putting, you know, everyone's effort into this. You know, we're starting from scratch with this work plan. We're also doing this in the middle of unprecedented growth. You know, haven't seen this kind of growth since the 80s and 90s. I heard the other day that there's actually a waiting list. I don't know if this is accurate, but I heard that there's a waiting list in Lakeside Tessera of 300 for 300. It's nuts. Robin's over there.
What is that from some people today that he was on the list?
Wow. So it's a lot of tasks, and again, kudos to Gage and Norma for putting together this draft work plan. Thank you very much for all the time that you're putting into this, and thank you everyone for your time. Yes, Meredith.
Thank you. One more thing I just wanted to add that I was remiss in giving you information on is that we do have positions open on various city boards and commissions, including the Youth Advisory Committee, the Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee. Applications are open until April 30th. And on our website, we have all the information that you need, including information on all the boards and commissions and their missions, who's on the committee, the terms, and qualifications necessary for applicants, and the application form. So we encourage everyone to take a look at that. And if there's anybody who you may think would be interested, to please forward that info on to them. The Youth Advisory Committee, we're real excited about. Hopefully we can get some interest in that.
Meredith, I recall at the last council meeting, Mayor Tidwell talking about it, and the council moved to start it back up. I forgot, if I'm not mistaken, I believe, do you recall what the minimum age was? I know the talk was centric to high school students, but I don't recall what the age requirement was.
It's for, let's see, let me just, there's not a specific age requirement. What it is for kids who are high school students that will be entering their junior year in the fall of 2021, and they'll serve a 2-year term. And then high school students that will be entering their senior year in fall of 2021, and they'll serve a 1-year term. There's also the need for one adult member who is to serve as a mentor and advisor, and they will serve a 2-year term, be subject to a background check. And everyone on the committee needs to reside within the city of Lago Vista limits.
Thank you. You know, one thing we've talked about as a committee is maybe reaching out to high school students for various things, and you know, perhaps paying attention to the agendas and the minutes, and if you have time to actually go to whenever, I don't know when the first meeting is going to be for the Youth Advisory Committee, but you know, one of the things they talked about at council is the Youth Advisory Committee, you know, a lot of volunteering from these guys and supporting our community in various ways through, I think one of the requirements of the committee is that they have to do so many hours of volunteering in our city. So maybe if anybody has any ideas on how we could use the talent from them and get the ideas of the youth and what they would like to see, you know, just any ideas germane to our purview that we could capitalize on by pulling upon those specific volunteers on the Youth Advisory Committee might be helpful to us and good for them. So if there's nothing else, does anybody have anything else before we go? Well, I motion that we end our meeting. May I have a second? I think I just got a second from Don. Don seconds. All those in favor say aye.
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 Bye.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening and enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you, Mr. Williams. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Meredith.
Bye,
Have a good one.
everyone.